Stand up.
Hello, my friends. I am back here on a Sunday morning, and if all went well, I landed in Las Vegas late last night, but I am making this for the Sunday morning drop and scheduling it then. By the way, if there's not a news and clips in the subtitle, it means it's just the interview. In case you hadn't figured that out yet, I'm trying to be more clear about that. Also, we did it! I've dropped the podcast every day this week. I hope you appreciate it, value it, and if you do and you're not a subscriber, patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Now, if you are and you want to pay more, lots of people do that when they feel like they're getting more or that I'm putting more work into it or however you measure these things. So thank you very much to all of you who have done that, and as well as everybody who has sent money to the Swing State Tour. You can Venmo me at Pete-Dominic, and sometimes it asks for the last 4 digits of my phone number. I'll tell you, it's 8844. There you go. $5, $20, a lot. Have given a lot more. Whatever you can. It'll pay for airfare, meals, parking at the airport, which is super expensive, and potential hotel stays in the future. But this week I'm in Vegas with Cassie, so you can give me your house, your points, whatever you want to help defer the costs, the very expensive extra costs of me going to the swing states so you don't have to. All right. My guest today is a really very smart woman. She is a constitutional law expert. She's an expert on separation of powers, presidential power, and the power of administrative agencies. So she is a great guest to talk about this very, very important issue, which I had no idea the consequences about. She's also a tenured law professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law, legal contributor on ABC, regularly writes for all kinds of outlets from Politico to The Atlantic to the Bulwark. She was an assistant United States attorney in Washington, D.C., and an associate independent counsel in the Whitewater investigation. How about that? She's the author of the books What You Need to Know About Voting and Why, How to Read the Constitution and Why, and How to Think Like a Lawyer and Why, a common sense guide to everyday dilemmas. This new book that we talk about today, it's called Pardon Power, How the Pardon System Works and Why. It's available now. She's also the recipient of the 2024-2025 Fulbright US Scholar Award. How about that? The University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Follow her on Twitter, on Instagram, where she hosts a series called #SimplePolitics, and listen to her right now. Get this book and this conversation with Kim Wehle, who I know through Glenn Kirshner and his events in Washington, D.C. that I've attended many times. Of course, I've seen her on ABC News and other outlets. I've interviewed her before. We've become friendly, and I have so much respect for everything that she does and writes here in this book and elsewhere. It's so, so important. I'm glad that you're listening to this conversation. I learned a lot. I think you will as well. So Kim Wehle, Pardon Power, How the Pardon System Works and Why. And I'll just add why it's a real threat to democracy if Donald Trump wins again. Let's do it. Kim Wehle is here, and she has a new book. I've just told you about it. Congratulations. You're everywhere. Everybody wants to talk to you. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Pete. Happy that it's out. Hope it makes an impact. Hope people read it. Hope people vote. Hope people save us from our worst enemy, ourselves.
Ah, well said. I love that our relationship is based on seeing each other once a year at Glenn Kirshner's event.
Yes, where there's jokes and alcohol and Glenn. What's not to love about that?
You told you really went way off the general topic and went into some biblical law. It was fascinating what you were talking about there. Could you just touch on that? I knew I was going to talk to you about your book. I was like, could she just give me a little of what she told the Justice Matters folks?
It was about the book, which is the pardon power dates back to the Bible. It dates back before that to the Code of Hammurabi, the ancient biblical text pre-Jesus. But famously, Pontius Pilate, there's on a holiday, a Passover, the people could ask for a pardon, could demand a pardon, and he gave 2 options, Jesus Christ and a guy named Barabbas, who was a murderer. And the crowd said, crucify him. And Jesus Christ was executed. So it's the denial of a pardon that led to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So that's what I was talking about, and how the threads behind the pardon power, that is mercy, not mercy, are still supposed to be how it's implemented, but it's not, at least not in recent administrations, that is Donald Trump's and people before him too.
Give me a little more on the history of the philosophy around the pardon itself, because it's not unique, obviously, to the United States of America's system, obviously.
Right. I mean, it's everywhere in the world except China, but ours is really borrowed from England, the monarchs. And I think what people need to keep in mind about England in the day, there was no criminal justice system. There were no jury trials until the 13th century. And it was kind of like a revenge killing system. So if somebody hurt you or your family member or murdered someone, it was up to the family to revenge the death. And so the king stepped in eventually and said, no, I'm here because the divine picked me. And I'm declaring that an injury against one of my subjects is a harm to me. So I give myself power to forgive the wrongdoer. And that's where the pardon came from. So there, a lot of capital punishment, Pete, for really low level crimes. There's a story in the book of this 4-year-old girl who accidentally pushed her brother into boiling water, and dad had to secure a pardon from the king because otherwise that child was going to, get the full letter of the law and in terms of punishment. So that's the source of it. It developed because there wasn't any other way of ensuring fairness. And today, in the federal system, there is no parole. So there really still isn't any other way of ensuring fairness if there's an unfair sentence or if there's data later or facts that demonstrate someone was actually innocent. We don't have any other mechanism really to get people out of federal prison for justice sake other than the pardon, but it's being used instead in the last days of office to give giveaways to cronies, to donors, to keep, potential witnesses silent,
right.
All that kind of corrupt and vile stuff that has no place in a democracy.
Well, I feel like the most important and most urgent question, and this is so relevant, is what are the implications for the 2024 election and the possible power for Donald Trump to get the pardon power back? But I'm not asking you that question yet. Because that's the most important question. Everybody's going to want to know the answer to that. But we still need more background, and we still need a little bit more historical usage of the pardon in the United States of America. I mean, in its best usage, in its most moral methods, what does it look like?
It looks like pardoning people who got long sentences for low-level crimes, like, say, a drug offense. You're the runner, you're the girlfriend of the kingpin, you're a single mom, you're leaving 3 kids to go to prison for a 20-year sentence. All the other people in the conspiracy, pled guilty. You're the only one who didn't get a deal, that kind of thing. And there was a woman named Alice Marie Johnson who Donald Trump pardoned, who had that kind of a background, arguably. She got the pardon because Kim Kardashian got a hold of her story and escalated it all the way to the president. So it really is people with power, access, luck that get these, not the ones that are necessarily people that deserve them. I'll say another
is it
way.
True that I think background matters. When Trump found out that Kim Kardashian wanted to talk to him about this pardon, he said yes. He didn't. She never was explained. He was never told what the request was or who this poor woman was. They just said, "So Kimberly Kardashian wants to come in and talk to you about pardoning." Yes, just to be clear, that's how it probably went. Probably,
and and then he propped her up and brought her to the RNC convention, and she showed up in ads. So this woman ended up being used. I mean, it's always something for him. Right, he doesn't do anything unless there's a goodie on the other side for him.
Well said. So I interrupted you with my.
Yeah, the other thing I was saying, there's something called amnesty, and all what that really is mass pardons. So Barack Obama in 2014. He initiated this program through DOJ of commutations. A commutation just means you get let out of jail earlier versus a full pardon for drug offenders who did not have a violent record. And if they had been sentenced in 2014, they would have gotten a lesser sentence. So the laws had been eased up, but these people are still there. So I think it could be used to correct some of these failings in the criminal justice system that is extraordinarily racist. 13.6% of the population are African American, and exonerations, that is when judges wipe records clean because they find some kind of a wrongful conviction. 50% of those are for people of color. So there are ways, I think, of using the pardon power to correct injustices, particularly because I said, federal habeas doesn't work. There's no parole. There really isn't no way to get out of prison, even if you're innocent and even if there's new evidence. And the last point I'll say, it costs American taxpayers $8 billion a year. It's going into prison. So, if it could be used to at least let the innocent out, it could actually save some taxpayer dollars that could go towards better uses than just imprisoning people that really don't belong there.
Who can be pardoned? Anyone? I could kill 100 people, 1,000 people. I could be a mass killer. We have plenty of them. Could I be pardoned?
If they're federal crimes, I think the answer is yes.
Okay. A
president can't pardon state law crimes. But if you kill them, there's an argument, I think, Pete, that there should be first at least be an indictment, but there's no court case that said that you can't pardon pre-indictment, but one way or the other. But Nixon pardoned Ford before there was any indictment. So people just say, oh, that must mean that presidents can do that. So I know we haven't gotten to this yet, but my big concern is Donald Trump, armed with his immunity decision, saying you can commit crimes so long as you use the really powerful stuff, the official power, where you could really do some damage. Then you can commit crimes. There's nothing anybody can do about it. He knows that now. And he gets his gang of thieves and bad guys, it populates them in the White House and says, okay, this is what we're going to do now that we can commit crimes, and I'll pardon all of you so you can help me, secure power using the military, spyware, bogus investigations, IRS audits, all the kinds of things that could really make people's lives
just miserable. To be clear, because you kind of glossed over it, now armed with his immunity decision. You're talking about the Supreme Court's decision on executive power. It changes everything about the pardon as well.
Correct. It changes everything it changes the structure of the Constitution itself. The court declared the Constitution unconstitutional. The court said that the limits on the presidential power in the Constitution are now unconstitutional. We're going to let crimes happen in the White House so long as you use the SEAL Team 6's guns and not your own personal pistol. It's completely, it's totally protected, and you can't even use that as evidence in a criminal trial. And now there's an incentive, Pete, to give a lot of pardons out so that you'll get people to help you commit a bunch of crimes. That's why the pardon power is really, really dangerous now, much more dangerous than it was before June of 2024 when the court manufactured this new thing that we should be quaking in our boots around.
It sounds like if the consequences to committing a crime are erased and the incentives are enhanced, like a huge cash payment or a great job, then the Supreme Court is making the president the guy who can do that. He can get rid of the consequences for a crime and invite you to be part of the bank robbery.
Precisely. And say, listen, Yikes. You're not president, so you don't get immunity, but I have this pardon power that in the immunity decision, the court said is core power and can never be prosecuted however I use it. So you all get pardons, and we'll just go merrily on our way with our bags of gold that we've stolen from the federal treasury.
The way you illustrate it. Yeah. Okay. So we did get to Trump and what could be, but that's also true of Kamala Harris because the Supreme Court decision is giving her that power. It's giving every future president that power. To be clear, we worry most about Trump because we know who he is. But the truth is any president would have that power unless, they somehow change that decision, which we can't see happening.
Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit cynical here on that one. And kind of gets in the weeds. No, the Supreme Court has said you make a line between official and unofficial acts. Okay. And the official stuff gets the crown of the king. The unofficial stuff, gets the orange jumpsuit potentially. Right. So if you use your private pistol, you could be in trouble. But if you use SEAL Team 6, it's official power. That being said, the court said, okay, well, what's official power? Pardon power is official power. It made it clear. Talking to your vice president, even if you're telling him to execute an unconstitutional directive, that is not to certify the election, they said that's official and protected.
They said talking to your Department of Justice, to the Attorney General. In this case, it was the acting Attorney General, and tell them to start announcing bogus investigations. That would be protected. So they've acknowledged that you can direct as president the top tiers to do unofficial acts. To commit crimes. But they were parroting the stuff that happened in the January 6th case. They were picking up on Donald Trump. They did not say what would be unofficial, and therefore you could still prosecute. They didn't say, right, well, it's unofficial. So I think, it's possible wiggle room that they could find a president that down the road they could construe their stuff as unofficial enough to allow a prosecution to go forward. Right.
No, I'm glad you got into the weeds. Those are very important weeds to get into. And I think it probably relates to Jack Smith's case in federal court. Which court is it that Justice Chutkan is overseeing? Because he's had to resubmit given the Supreme Court's decision to see what is covered and what is not in terms of Trump's actions around January 6th insurrection, right? Like we're seeing.
Right. I mean, the dissenting justices said, I think it was Sotomayor said, they've given themselves pre-clearance authority. Like they're the super prosecutors. They get to pre-clear any indictment. So I guess what I was trying to say earlier is as how much Jack Smith does, they could ultimately say, no, we're not going to let this indictment go forward against this guy, Donald Trump. But if Kamala Harris were to cross a line, the opinion is loosey-goosey enough for the same majority to later say, this one, we will let this indictment go forward.
I don't like that at all. I don't like that detail because of the makeup of the court.
That was my weeds.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's what I was saying, is that essentially, I think they've left open unofficial conduct so much. They get the discretion. They get to decide. They are now the super Jack Smiths. They're the super Merrick Garlands. And they've left themselves enough wiggle room to allow an indictment to go forward against a different president. They're just not going to do it with Donald Trump. At least they haven't seen it, what they think they'd be comfortable with. And I think there's a strong chance they won't let any indictment go forward against Donald Trump for January 6th or even for Mar-a-Lago. Well, they didn't really weigh in on that.
The classified documents case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, that is something that we really need to digest a lot. This is, when I first saw that you had written this book, knowing the other books that you had written, which are all super helpful and informative, how to think like a lawyer and why, what you need to know about voting and why, and how to read the Constitution and why. So I see the title of this book, Pardon Power, How the Pardon System Works and Why. And I say, that doesn't seem to me to be as important as your other books. That seems to be like a very interesting and important article. But this conversation and reading the book explains why it is so important, because you can explain what it means, pardon power, for democracy.
Yeah, exactly. It's right at the heart of all of it, Pete. I mean, think about it. Donald Trump, gets elected, not only can he use the pardon power to put a criminal crime gang in the White House and maybe never leave, he's also promised to pardon the 1,400 plus insurrectionists, giving him a private mini militia and signaling to Americans that political violence will be rewarded so long as it's for the right political party. If Donald Trump is not elected and the cases go forward, then I still think it's possible he pardoned himself. And I know our friend Glenn Kirshner does not disagree with this. It's possible he pardoned himself when he was president before, and that could pop up in the context of these cases if the Supreme Court doesn't protect him completely, or there could be pressure by the Republican Party on Kamala Harris to pardon Donald Trump, just like Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, I think, to his political, demise.
What is your personal opinion? You're also a political expert and analyst on what Kamala Harris pardoning Donald Trump for all of his crimes would be a good or bad thing, or somewhere in between.
I mean, I don't think the Republican Party would reward her for that. I think whatever she would get in exchange, I think in this moment, no one trusts each other. I think it would not be a good idea. I would not support that at all.
But not only that, you're talking about the transaction. I'm talking about for the soul of America, Kim.
Likewise, that's my point. I think the soul of America requires some kind of accountability for January 6th. That's what I think.
I feel like one of the biggest problems
clear.
In America in my lifetime, and yours, I guess, is the lack of accountability on many things, from the Nixon to Vietnam to the financial crisis of 2008 to Iraq to obviously Trump. I mean, and we could list a lot of powerful people get away with things. Iran-Contra, some of the lower level guys got caught. So I've always felt like there's other countries, often I think about South Korea and Iceland, Israel, Japan, have much more accountable systems for powerful people. And I think that would benefit any society. And now I'm going to stop talking and get back to a better question for you, I
agree with all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that because you're the expert. What are your concerns about the election? Kamala Harris wins, gets all 300 electoral votes, similar makeup, maybe say similar results to the last election. Donald Trump will likely challenge it all and will be having deja vu. What do you think about this Supreme Court and how they look at the court challenges versus how this and the lower courts, more importantly, looked at the court challenges? What are your concerns about Trump's challenges to this election?
My concerns are that they are vying for certain states not being able to certify the election. And we know this because they're the shenanigans that have already started in Georgia, where they've changed the rules to basically allow the vote counters, the ballot counters, to not count ballots if they're worried about fraud, just because, with no criteria or standards. And the reason that I think this is such a problem, Pete, is because under the 12th Amendment to the United States Constitution, if it's a failed election, if you just don't have the votes counted in time, the House of Representatives will decide the president, and the House of Representatives in this moment is controlled by the Republican Party. Now, and I also think say Georgia, the deadline comes, they're saying fraud, because, just because I saw it on the internet, or, suitcases full of votes or dead people, or all this stuff. And so the deadline comes and goes and they don't have a number. If you look at Bush versus Gore, it was a different Supreme Court, but, it was a conservative majority. The takeaway from Bush versus Gore is deadlines are deadlines. So I think what the court would say is, sorry, deadlines are deadlines. You don't have a certification out of Georgia. We don't have it. And then if there's not 270 votes, electoral college votes from the balance of the states by, December, then it's a failed election. And then the Republicans decide it. And then I think you've got chaos, and you probably have protests in the streets, and you probably have violence. I mean, it's impossible to even imagine. Well, but I don't know why they would do this stuff in Georgia. I mean, that's the real end run.
I feel like Democrats, the Harris campaign, people like Mark Elias are doing everything they can to prepare for that and other outcomes. And that makes me, that's how I sleep at night.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't know that team that well. I know he knows well what he's doing, but we're playing a game that's never been played before.
Right.
And I think the last time the litigation was reactive, that is, Donald Trump's team was filing a bunch of lawsuits. I wouldn't be surprised if this round, the Democratic team needs to be proactive, like force the other side to do X, Y, Z. That's a different posture. It's a weaker posture. So I know people are on task. But I just think it's impossible to predict that this is going to go well, even if she wins. And I just think Americans need to be on task and understand, and I'll say this really deliberately, the way around this is huge numbers of voter turnout.
Right.
I mean, if Georgia is, they're claiming there's 300,000 fake ballots, that is not a pill to swallow, right? If they're saying there's 30,000 or 13 or 3,000 because Democrats didn't get out to vote enough, because they figured, everybody, we're sailing through now. It's not Biden anymore. And look at all the cool memes on the internet, whatever, you go Harris, and they just don't get around to it. That's when we're in trouble.
This book is so good. You're so good at talking about all of these things, which is why you must be just a very sought after class to have as a professor at the University of Baltimore School of Law. Can I ask you, because I talked with my friend Eric Siegel of Georgia State University. He brought this up. How do you deal with the incoming law students who are Trump supporters? Is that a challenge for you?
It doesn't come out that they're Trump supporters expressly, but it does come out in the discussions around some of these issues, like when I'm teaching the cases, where you can see the talking points coming out about, good, bad judges and bad judges, or regulation is terrible, or the state should be able to regulate abortion. The bigger challenge really is what the Supreme Court is doing is really intellectually dishonest. It's not textualism. It's not originalism. It's conservative Supreme Courtism. And so the way it's hard to teach because there's not a thread. So the way I've started teaching it is just, I talk about all the ways that you can deal with ambiguity. There isn't a right to abortion. So what do you do about it? There isn't, it doesn't actually say there's an individual right to bear arms. So if you've got that, if it's unclear, what can you look at, right? Can you look at the text? Can you look at the history? Can you look at morality and religion? And then usually that's when they start getting squeamish, right? So I try to just give them just a takeaway of the notion that law, like life, is hard and it's ambiguous and there aren't black and white answers. And I think if they can walk out of my class having that much, I've done something.
Wow, that's interesting. Really interesting. Well, thank you for letting us be in your class today. Congrats on the new book, Pardon Power, is at booksellers everywhere. Go get it now. Kim Wehle, you are an American treasure. Thank you so much for talking to us and teaching us today. Really, really great.
Oh, it's always fun to talk to you. Thank you for having me, Pete.
All right, there you go. Kim Wehle, go get the book. Go follow her on the social media. Go let her know that you heard her here. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I cannot do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick now. Write a rating or review on Spotify or on Apple or YouTube. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram and all the rest. Thank you very much for listening today. You guys are the best. I hope you are having a great weekend if you're listening to it now, and wherever you're at, finding joy, alleviating suffering, and trying to help other people, which to me is the thing that fights all of the anxiety and depression that life will bring all of us inevitably whenever you can. That's it. That's all. Talk to you tomorrow from Nevada. John Carroll taking us out as always.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep things tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand